Good morning or afternoon, depending upon where you are. And thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Monica Parrish-Trent, and I'm the Chief Program and Network Officer for Achieving the Dream. Welcome. Today's webinar will prepare you and your team to complete and submit this year's annual reflection. Each year, Achieving the Dream asks its network college participants to complete an annual reflection that covers two key matters. First, what you've accomplished over this most recent academic year, and second, what you anticipate focusing on in the coming academic year. Today's webinar will walk you through this year's annual reflection template, preparing you to complete and submit a strong reflection that not only captures the accomplishments and road ahead for your college, but also positions ATD to better support you in the coming academic year. If you're new to this process, I want to thank you in advance for your time and contributions to your college's annual reflection. And let me assure you, Achieving the Dream realizes and reads each and every annual reflection carefully, distilling key themes from the reflections and designing tailored supports for colleges like yours based on what you share with us. We have an engaging webinar planned for you today. And at this time, I'm pleased to welcome today's presenters, Dr. Ryan Knight, the Associate Director of Recruitment and Retention, and Dr. Mandy Koch, Associate Director of Research and Assessment. Drs. Koch and Knight are joined by Dr. Melinda Anderson, Executive Director of Network Engagement, who will oversee the question and answer portion of today's webinar. Without further ado, let's get started. And I'm pleased to welcome Ryan to today's webinar to get us started.
Thanks so much, Monica. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here today and are looking forward to engaging with you. We just wanted to provide a few technical reminders here at the outset. At the bottom of your screen, you should see your Zoom menu there. If you need to adjust any of your audio settings, you're welcome to do so as desired. At ATD, we primarily use the chat feature. I know that we have both the chat and the Q&A. So if you see both of them, please just focus on the chat. That'll allow us to see each other's comments and engage most directly. If we see any comments come into the Q&A, we'll be sure to just move those over into the chat just so that way we can keep everyone together and centralized in one place. So look forward to engaging with you there. And then finally, we have closed captions that are able to be utilized if you would like to do that as well. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to engaging with you today. To kick things off, we just wanted to give you a chance to share a little bit more. Thank you so much for already introducing yourselves. Based on the focus of this webinar, we have colleges that are maybe in one of two places. Some of you have already done an annual reflection before, so this might be your second, your third, or however many years doing this. And so the first chat blast question that we'd like for those of you who have done one before to answer is, how have you used annual reflections in the past to foster reflective thinking? The way that a chat blast works is you'll have about 30 seconds to type your answer, so please hold on hitting send until we get to that phase. But if you've done an annual reflection before, please take about 30 seconds to collect your response, type it in, and then when we say go, feel free to drop that in. Look forward to seeing your response. Those of you who are doing an annual reflection for the first time, we are so looking forward to working with you on this process. Your question will be in about a minute's time. What is the main question you have about the annual reflection process? So again, if it's your first time, what is the main question you have? So we're going to circle back to those who have done an annual reflection before. And the question for you is, how have you used annual reflections in the past to foster reflective thinking? Take about 10 more seconds, if you would, please, and then we will send our responses. Okay, 3, 2, 1 for our repeat annual reflection people. All right. So collaborative efforts based on data, love it. Focus our efforts on student success. Thanks so much. Process with the team collectively. Oh, I like that one a lot. Gathering data, setting up for next year's work, considering lessons. These are incredible responses. Thank you all. Using it to reflect and plan. Stay focused on key goals. A lot around keeping your vision on where you want to go as you move into the future. Data collected in different presentations. Excellent. Thank you all. Now we'd like to hear from those who are doing an annual reflection for the first time. Looking forward to hearing what's the main question that you have about the annual reflection process. And if you or at a school that's done annual reflections, but this is your first time doing it, feel free to weigh in here as well. But we'll take about 10 more seconds before we do the second chat blast. So hold on hitting send, if you will. Three, two, one, and take off. And have a clear template to follow. We've got good news for you. Making sure the report is complete. Always good, thank you. What to do when the goals change over the course of the year. Mandy will be touching on this, and we can also offer some suggestions around this. Really appreciate that thought. Anything else? All right, well, thank you so much for engaging with us. Feel free to keep sharing any questions that you have or additional observations about how you've used annual reflections in the past. But we just want to spend a little bit of time kind of framing out the annual reflection and really kind of how it shaped out and why we even engaged in this process. As we'll see shortly, the ATD annual reflection is comprised of two key parts. Firstly, the reviewing of what you did over the past academic year, and we saw this in some of the comments that were just shared during the first chat blast. And secondly, providing an overview of what you anticipate focusing on next year. Together, both of these provide a great format and opportunity for you to engage in reflective practice. By reflective practice, we mean the purposeful, ongoing routine of assessing what you've been doing. You're also letting your recent progress inform where you plan to continue going. And finally, you're assessing or reassessing what changes, new practices, or new goals might be needed to continue moving forward. It'd be great to hear from you in the chat regarding how you do this. What ways, if you haven't already talked about this with annual reflections, what ways do you regularly engage in reflective practice, either individually or collectively at your college? So you can go ahead and hit send as you would like to there, but we will just keep moving in the interest of time. So much of what we do through ATD hinges on transformational change, which is long-term, ongoing, and an iterative process. In higher education, it's easy to slip into routine and doing business as usual. But we know that business as usual gets us the same results and, in many cases, perpetuates the systemic inequalities at our colleges that prevent students from being as successful as they could be. The annual reflection isn't the only way to engage in reflective practice, but it's certainly one incredibly valuable approach. What you'll find in the annual reflection template is that this approach asks you to reflect on your transformational change journey, the institutional capacities you built along the way, and those you may want to continue working to build, and key data and strategic planning documents that can unite your college and coalesce efforts to move in one collective direction. At the outset, we want to make clear that the annual reflection is a team effort and shouldn't be, and hopefully isn't, the sole responsibility of one team member at your college. Reflective practice does take place at an individual level, but this annual reflection process is designed to foster and facilitate reflective practice across a team regarding your college's student success work. We strongly and humbly encourage you to involve a cross-functional group of stakeholders in the annual reflection process. Your core team members, those who are directly working on your student success and ATD efforts, should definitely have the opportunity to engage, share their insights, and identify where they think your institution could potentially use more support from ATD. True to form, ATD's annual reflection demonstrates its commitment to evidence-based decision-making and carefully looking at data. As a result, you'll certainly want your IR or IE team to participate, provide relevant data regarding your progress against goals over the last year, and sharing target goals for projects new or continuing you have planned for the next academic year. Since leaders are integral to the transformational change process, I also want to encourage you to give senior leaders a chance to weigh in on and review your annual reflection as their schedules permit. Lastly, if you have an ATD coach or coaches, feel free to loop them in as you're working on your annual reflection. They can help guide and frame what you focus on in your annual reflection. I know we're a ways out, but my colleagues and I can't wait to read your annual reflection starting in June. This is one of the highlights of our year, and we really learn a lot from this process. They are immensely helpful with letting us know where what you've been working on and where you see yourself going next year. They also help us help you. Through what we learn and hear from you, we tailor our supports, resources, and conference planning to address your needs and evolving areas of focus. Quickly before we dive into the actual template, I just wanted to share a couple tips for completing a strong annual reflection. You only have space for 3 goals, as we'll see when Mandy shares the template. Space for 3 goals to report on from this past year, as well as 3 goals to identify for the coming academic year. We encourage you to focus on goals most closely tied to your transformational change efforts, strategic plan, and equity work. Second, while you have a lot to cover, try to do so in a succinct and concise way. Clarity comes from concision. Third, consider reviewing recent annual reflections you have submitted in prior years, particularly last year, if your college has done an annual reflection before. This can help you know which goals to report on for this current one that you'll be working on, this current annual reflection. Besides this, though, it also helps you to assess the change narratives that emerged from last year's narrative. From that, you can continue that narrative as the next chapter of your college's story. Finally, place particular emphasis on collaborating around any new goals you might be setting when accounting for the year ahead. It's well to co-create your goals with group consensus and data jointly ratifying where you plan to go from here. Hopefully these tips and insights have gotten you excited about reviewing the actual annual reflection template, which is what we'll do next. At this time, I'm excited to welcome Mandy to take us through the template, as well as the ATD Connect site and the submission page. So Mandy?
Thank you, Ryan. And I'm going to share my screen. One moment. All right, everybody should be looking at the Canvas site, which I'm going to send you all to here in a moment. All right, so I'm going to help you through the mechanics. I am also one of the people on the research and assessment team that is going to end up reading almost all of your annual reflections, and I'm really looking forward to those this year. Last year, they were a great way to introduce me to the network as I completed my first year here at Achieving the Dream. So first, a couple of things that you should know about the Canvas site. It is a public site, which means that you do not need any credentials to log in to this site. So as long as you have the address, which we've sent to you in your email, and we're going to drop that in the chat, you should be able to get right to the site. You don't need to log in, you don't need a username, and you don't need a password. So that's tip number one. The second thing is everything that you need for your annual reflection is going to be located here on this Canvas site. So the first thing I want to point you to is that there is a link here for a worksheet. The second thing that's on here eventually will be the recording of this webinar. So if we say something today and that you forget and you're like, oh, I really would love to know what they said, the recording will be right here for you. And then finally, the last thing on this site is the actual link to the online submission form. All right, so new this year is that you will find when you go to submit your annual reflection answers is that we have changed the format and it will look a little longer, but it's actually easier. So we've taken out, for those of you who've done it in the past, we had a lot of these large complicated tables. Those are no more, they are gone. And the other thing about the online submission form is that it will ask you at the very end this year, what will be your goals from next year? And they should link to the things that you talked about earlier. So there's a little bit of logic in there. If anybody gets any trouble or has any trouble with that logic or encounters problems with the forms, please reach out to the data team. And I will put the data team's email address in the chat here in a few moments. All right, so what is the process for you all in terms of filling out the actual annual reflection? So the first thing we would love for you to do is access this annual reflection worksheet right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. All right, so this is actually a Word document, and we would love for you, first thing to do is to actually click up here, it says download, and download this to your computer or to your server, okay? Because we want you to use this worksheet as your own place to draft your answers for your college. So download it, and then we would love for you to fill this out as you collect all those people that Ryan were talking about. So your IA team and all the other key stakeholders that are going to help fill out this reflection this year. When you gather them together, you should be working on this worksheet document to answer all the questions. All right, I'm going to go back to that main canvas. All right, so once you have drafted your questions in the worksheet, you are then going to sit down and you're going to take a moment to actually do the online form itself. I'm going to go ahead and click there so you can see And open it in a new window. And this is what you will see when you get there. Now, a couple key tips about filling out this online form. This online form is not necessarily easy to access if you were to leave it. So we want you to plan time so that you can submit everything into the online form in one sitting. That would be the ideal situation for everybody. And that is partially why we provide you with the worksheet. So you can take your time collaborating on all your answers. You put them in the worksheet. Then when you get to this nice online form here, you're just copying and pasting from your worksheet to the online form. Now, if you do, for whatever reason, get into the online form and you said, oh, I cannot finish it, there's an emergency, I gotta go, do not either clear out your cache or your cookies. So you can potentially come back to this form if you're using the same computer and the same browser, as long as you haven't dumped your cache or cookies. If, again, you run into any difficulties with that, please reach out to the data team and we can help you navigate that. All right. Just checking my notes to make sure a couple other things. Yes, okay. So once you've got everything in the form and you get to the very last page, there's going to be an option for you to save a copy of your answers. And please do that. And that way that you'll have a copy saved to your actual network. So once you save these go into our online database and you won't be able to reach them yourself. So if you'd like to have a copy for yourself or other folks at your college, please go ahead and download that copy and save it to your computer or network. And then the final thing, the most important thing, is at the very bottom of that last page of the form is a submit button. So I need you to scroll all the way down to the bottom of that form and hit submit before you close out of your browser. All right, and I am gonna stop sharing and hand things back to Ryan. I believe it's Ryan. And then I'm gonna drop my data email address into the chat.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Mandy. Really appreciate that. I'll screen share once more. And we wanted to walk through a few frequently asked questions. So I, in turn, am going to hand it over to our newest colleague, Dr. Melinda Anderson.
Well, hello. It's my pleasure to be able to host this portion of our webinar. And I do see some good questions coming in. So if you have some questions, especially while we have Ryan, Mandy, and Dr. Trent here, we'll make sure that we answer your questions or can follow up with you if we need to do some research. So a lot of the frequently asked questions we got, we just said, you know what, we'll put together a slide and we'll just kind of walk through the ones that we typically hear. Is this a collaborative process? Who should participate? So Ryan spoke to this earlier, but yes, engaging in a cross-functional team, leading and tracking your student success work is important when you think about this reflective exercise. Can we do this together in person or remotely? Whatever works best for you. Sometimes a short meeting to coordinate who's doing which part, and then making sure that you're being comprehensive in your responses would be very helpful. Should we just copy and paste a list of the things that we've done? Well, I know that many of you have done a lot of work this past year. A lot of tremendous work has happened on campuses. So we do recommend condensing lists, but then providing a level of narrative. So we're not asking for dissertations, right? But just really wanting to have a richer understanding of the work that you've accomplished this year. Can you receive a copy of our annual reflections? Yes, we just want to keep emphasizing this because we do want you to feel comfortable in being able to reach out to us to get information for those who have already completed this process before. So emailing network@achievingthedream.com, we'll make sure that we'll get that information to you. Is the submission form unique? Like last year, so Mandy did an excellent job of explaining that the site is open. We have a Word doc for you to be able to draft a template, and then ideally one person just has to cut and paste into the submission document. So to make that as easy as possible. So please at this time, if you have any additional questions in the chat, I did see some coming in while I started speaking. So for example, the first question is the final PDF formatting was an issue, has it improved? And so I'm thinking, I see Mandy nodding her head, but Mandy, I'll let you come off mute so you can respond.
Yes, the formatting in prior versions of the annual reflection was very difficult, and that was mainly due to those large tables of information we asked you to fill out. So we've removed all of those large tables. You'll see when you get into the online form. And so this year, when you go to save your PDF version, you should be able to save it on a standard 8.5 by 11 size piece of paper, and it all should come out clean and nothing gets chopped off.
Perfect. Thank you, Mandy. Before you go back on mute, another question. Will they be receiving an email that confirms their submission when they submit it through Qualtrics?
I do not believe we have it set up that you receive an email upon submission, but you will get a submission message. So once you hit the submit button, it'll say, thank you for submitting your form. That's the end of it. If you need any further confirmation, or you feel like you had difficulty and you didn't know it, maybe the internet was a little weird that day and you hit your submit and you're not sure if it went through, feel free to reach out to us and we can confirm that we got it.
Okay, thank you so much, Mandy. So there is a question, this, in terms of the due date being June 2nd, it's a short time to collaborate, only 3 weeks. Yes, so thank you for sharing that in the chat. What we've recognized, for example, is having the Word doc. It might be an opportunity for people to be assigned questions. They complete them on their own, and then maybe having that meeting will then help to edit. It's always hard to write in a group, I find, and it's sometimes hard to edit in a group. And so I think everybody being able to at least designate who answers what question in the Word document, being able to do that individually, and then coming together on a meeting and then making sure that you're editing and thinking through the questions for your response might be a good way to accomplish that with the time frame. Another question, we have a goal related to enrollment and one related to retention. We won't have the full picture of our effort, of the impact of our efforts in these two metrics until census date, fall 2023. Can we submit additional data to our reflection at that time? So Mandy, I'm going to kick it to you to say, is it possible for us to update once we do have outcome-based data to help support and strengthen our goal?
There's not necessarily an option to update. So like if that census date is in the fall, there's not really an opportunity to update it. And that's okay. So the annual reflection is really meant to capture you in the midst of all of these things that you're doing to create change and improvement at your college. So just give us the narrative of what is going, how far you've gotten on that path for each of those goals. There is, however, an option at the very beginning of the form. We're going to ask you to upload a couple of specific things. One is your strategic plan, one is an equity statement. However, there's an option for you to add a couple documents of your own. So if you have current data, even though it's not your census date yet, but if you have current data or other information on those two goals that you would like to share with us, you could upload to there so we could see where you were at that point. And then next year, when the project has finished, that would be probably something that you would report on your next annual reflection.
Perfect. Thank you, Mandy. I hope that Mandy's answer helped, because we do know how census rolls around the calendar. And so we know that this report is before that one. So thank you so much. And so I'm looking at the chat to see if there's any other questions. Of course, you can always follow up with network@achievingthedream.com. If you have any questions, remember, if you need your reflection from last year, any technical questions, Mandy has put her information in the chat. And of course, reaching out to the Canvas site, you'll have an opportunity to then access our information once again. Yes, the due date for this was June 2nd. It was at the top of, the Word document as well as the Qualtrics form, but thank you for asking that, because we do want to make sure June 2nd is the date. If there are any challenges in meeting that date, Ryan has put in the chat to email network@achievingthedream.com and let us know, and so we can figure out the best way to support you. Yeah, Kathy, yes, so the question is, the tribal colleges were just notified of the continuation. Will we still have a report due? Yes, tribal colleges are being asked to submit a report, although it will be modified in some way. And so Mandy, can you speak to what they'll be asked to put in the report?
The tribal colleges generally will fill out the form as it is. There will just be one different ask for them that they will have to upload their KPI report information. And that's clearly outlined in the online form. So if you are tribal college, when you put in your college information, it'll trigger something in the online form to ask you to upload those KPIs.
I also want to acknowledge Alina Randall. She has her hand up to answer the question as well, Alina.
Thanks so much, Monica. And Mandy, you did wonderful. Thank you so much for responding to Kathy. Kathy, just to clarify, the TCUs participating in Project Success will submit an annual reflection. And as the team mentioned, you know, it's a great opportunity to reflect on the work and plan ahead for the upcoming year. And as Mandy mentioned, you'll recall that we typically request the KPI report submitted with the annual reflection. And we do recognize that this phase of Project Success continued later in the spring semester. So this is an optional submission as part of the annual reflection process. However, the KPI report is due in October 2023. So if you have the 2021-2022 data available now, we encourage you to submit the report with the annual reflection. You know, we all love scratching something off our to-do list early. So we definitely encourage that. And I will send an email follow-up to TCUs participating in Project Success with additional info, including a copy of the template, an instructional video explaining the template for new team members, and then links also shared in this webinar, such as the Canvas site. And then lastly, your coaches will also have the materials, and we encourage you to work with your coaches to help guide and frame what to focus in the annual, what to focus on in the annual reflections. And then if you need any guidance for completing the key performance indicator report. So thanks so much for the question, Kathy, and happy to answer questions. And I'll throw my email in the chat if there are any further tribal college questions.
Thank you so much, Alina. I appreciate that. So Alina will put her email in the chat. And Ryan also shared that for anyone just joining the cohort who just joined the network in ATD, you will be focusing on your action plan, which is also due June 2nd. So the annual reflection is optional for you as well. And so I'm scanning the chat again for any other questions, and I don't see any, Ryan. So I think that, yes, thank you so much. I was just going to, Johnny on the spot right there. I was just going to say to wrap up, of course, thanking you for your engagement and your time this afternoon or morning and joining us. We do have an Adult Learner Success Summit. It's virtual. We will be hosting that on May 11th from 1 till 5 p.m. Eastern time. And so in the chat, we will drop a link for those who have not already registered. It's going to be a good time. We have over 800 people registered for this amazing event. And I've heard colleagues say it's not just because we're really good at our marketing, it's because of the content that we will be sharing at this time. So please, if you haven't, being a part of our network, it is a free conference for you. So please click on the link and register, and then use your code if you're in the network. And we look forward to seeing you on May 11th at the Adult Learner Success Summit. And again, thank you for your time and energy today. Again, this will be posted in case you need to listen to this video again as you are starting your work on your annual reflections. And let us know if there's anything that we can do to support you along the way.